All right, we're going to get started.
Hello, hello.
All right, so our presenter tonight already introduced himself as we went around the room, but Alan Higby, K0AD, and I will let him take it.
Well, hi, how are you? I've heard a lot about this club. Its reputation spread far and wide, and it's a really going concern, as you already know. So I am not a technical guy. I don't do math very well, and so I went off into other endeavors and took soft political science and things like that in college. So anyway, I live in Colorado Springs, and this will not be a technical talk. So you can relax. You don't need to take notes or anything like that. And by the end of the talk, I hope that there's a few things that are a little bit new way of looking at something. Nothing no big revelation or anything like that, but just a different way to look at it. And I've come to the basic thing of the talk is that I want to get to the idea of having satisfaction out of the hobby. Because I've found there's moments when I'm on the air or I'm doing something, like the latest thing was a big windstorm came through recently and ripped my heaviest duty Yaesu rotor, the G2800, just ripped it out and it's freewheeling, and I had to go up and change it. I had to problem solve, figure out what it was, and then round up a ground guy and get out the right tools and do all that. But it was great satisfaction when it was done and I got off the damn tower. So it's just a crank up, but I still had to, those are harder to climb if you have to get your feet in there right. Anyway, hopefully you'll be thinking about what makes you satisfied in ham radio, because, and I'll recount a little bit of what I've been through. I started off doing something I thought I wanted to do, and I got bored with it, and I moved on, and then I got bored with that, and all very quickly in a matter of 4 years probably, and I've through that come to understand what really makes me happy and satisfied, and it may change. So I've got a list of other things that are pending. They're in the on deck circle, if you will. I'm going to start with provide a set of tips for someone who's starting out in ham radio. Again, not technical, but just things to think about to help you get to a point where you're doing things that make you happy and satisfied and interested and turn you or perpetuate your lifelong learning. And then there'll be some tips that I've gleaned from and you get to see, we'll apply these tips to things that I went through as I developed, choices I made. And along the way, we'll talk about contests and DXing, which is what Hans actually asked me to talk about in the first place. So I'm freelancing in the beginning. So we know that the video gaming industry is huge, and there's so much money involved in it, billions and billions of dollars. And you can be sure that they've done research about what makes a game successful. And those, some of the things that make a game successful and makes people literally addicted to them are clear objectives, well-defined rules, structure, purpose, ongoing challenge, skill development, variety, social interaction, because they try to get you to compete with people online and do that. I understand that in Korea, I read a story about it, they have grandstands like Mile High Stadium, 80,000 people as spectators for video gaming. But that's the feedback and the progression, going through the skill levels and all that. Well, we have all that in ham radio. We have the laws of physics. You don't get to cheat that. You might think you are or delude yourself. Um, so what makes a hobby enjoyable and engaging? Well, all the things that go into gaming. Challenge, progression, social connections, connection to nature and the outdoors. So whether you're getting involved in the laws of physics of propagation at nature, and you look at the northern lights a little differently if you're on an HF. If you're in POTA, you're outdoors. SOTA, you're looking for lightning, I guess. Anyway, we have it all in ham radio. It's all here. All the things that make it potentially very exciting. So that's the overcoming of a challenge. Whether you do that through contesting or chasing an award like Worked All States, or DXCC, those kinds of things. One of the things that gives me a lot of satisfaction, and you probably too, is that, what I want to do is call it out so we can be sure and appreciate it. That is collaboration, working with other people and solving a problem together, and learning new skills. And the magic, what it says underneath here is, if technology doesn't seem like magic, it's probably obsolete. And the deal is that I think if you're involved in ham radio, a niche in ham radio that doesn't seem like magic to you, look at the list of things that you might have. What's in your on deck circle? What else have you got? And the next slide will be something that I don't know how close it is in my on deck circle, but look at this. This is that K0PRT that down at Haswell. This is a ham operation. That's a 60-foot surplus dish they got from the government and the land around it. And I went down there for an open house last September, and then I'd been down there once before watching some guys. I'm not in it. I'm not in the club, but I know people who are, kind of. I'm not even a hanger-on. My jaw drops when I look at that thing. And the first time I went down there, they were they were getting signals with that dish from outer space, and I don't know how far out, but way out there, galaxies or whatever. And I told you it wasn't technical. But they were analyzing potential deep space signals for SETI, the extraterrestrial stuff. And they were talking about it, and I didn't, there's a lot of things that are entertaining that just go over, just knowing what's out there that you could get into. And this is on the list. And as somebody else said about making a first EME contact, I think that's what you said. That's the second time I went down for the open house. They had been making EME contacts, bouncing signals with that dish off the moon over into Europe and making contacts. And by the time I got there, the moon had moved around, so they couldn't get it to bounce the right way. But they let me push the button and say a word into the radio, and I could hear my voice come back from bouncing off the moon. That's on my list, okay? If I ever get tired of the stuff I'm doing.
For the record, that's where I made my first EME contact.
Oh, down there. Oh, were you down at the open house?
I'm actually a member.
Oh, okay.
He is too, and she is.
All right. So
members here.
any corrections or additions to what I said?
Just take it. Otherwise, we can tell you all sorts of technical stuff.
Okay. Okay. Oh, great. Okay. I'm glad to hear that. So anyway, I said I was going to do 7 tips, but by the time I got them all written down, I'm just going to give you a clue. I got 11. One is keep an open mind, stay flexible. Don't say, oh, I'm just a 40-meter phone guy or gal, or, this is all I do. Keep an open mind, stay flexible, and keep a list in your mind, anyway, of things that you might be interested in. I'll share mine in a minute here. My list involves emergency communication, SOTA, POTA. These are I do some POTA stuff. And I'd like to someday install and operate HF Mobile in my truck. I'd like to do some more work with software-defined radios. I'd like to, I think someday, maybe as I slow down a little bit and can't climb the tower to fix the rotor, be able to have a smaller setup and do FT8 or some satellites or something. I've had one contact on a satellite. But any of those, for me, would be worthwhile taking a deep dive into. And I would suggest, again, that we all just kind of have a list if we don't already. Another thing that is pretty cool, but I don't know that I'll ever get there, but I would love to, is have a really well-equipped workbench, have knowledge, and be able to build something from scratch. I mean, really and do that. But I listened to a podcast called Solder Smoke, and those guys talk that way, and it's a spectator sport for me at the moment, you know. But it's really, you know, I don't pretend to know. I just, so there's lots and lots of stuff to do. Keep a list. My journey in this was I started thinking I wanted to be a shortwave listener. My parents knew a guy who was a ham, and he said, come on, get out of that. That's not going, you're going to get bored with that. I was in the 8th grade. And so then I said, okay, I'd like to get on 2 meters, because I was a novice at the time. I'd like to get on 2-meter phone. So I did that, and that was limited pool of people to talk to before repeaters. Then I got on 40-meter phone. That didn't do it for me at all. Then I got on CW, was on the West Coast, and had a small antenna and was able to work. And the bands were hot like they are now, really great. And I was working DX quickly. Small station, 35 watts, a dipole was about 5 feet off the roof. Japan, Alaska, Hawaii, South America sometimes. You know, that seemed magical, like that kid. That's what got me going. And it's just one of many things that can make us feel it's magical. Gradually met some local hams who did the same thing, some of whom are still personal friends today, all these years later. We were both, when I met this one guy, he didn't have a driver's license yet, and he's now 77 years old. And he sent me a picture of an email. He emailed me this afternoon and called me the other day. So we're still in touch. I joined a DX club. I got to ask questions, rub shoulders with people. Not rub shoulders, that would imply something else. I mean, no, I don't mean it, nothing untoward. I just mean that I was not even close to being their equal. These were people that were on the honor roll in DXCC and had a lot of, you know, I got to learn a lot of stuff. Heard the anecdotes and the stories and learned what the successful people were doing. But whatever your endeavor is, whether it's EME or any of this other stuff, that's how you get into it. So, tip 2, the lost art of scrounging. I get the impression, and I could be wrong, but my impression is that a lot of people new hams are buying stuff out of catalogs, and I was interested to hear your program of loaner equipment from the club. As I was thinking about this, the borrowing and the scrounging and the buying of used equipment, for the first 17 or 18 years I was a ham, I had always either scrounged, borrowed, or had used equipment. I never had anything new until pretty late in the game. Time-honored tradition in ham radio, scrounging. Now, what's the difference between scrounging and being cheap? I don't know. I think they're both good ham qualities. So it saves you money, makes it easier to try something out if you're interested in having that equipment. It induces social interaction, because if somebody's going to loan you something, you have a relationship. And likewise, So, and then one of the things that, thinking back on it, you're ensuring the other, if somebody's going to loan you some equipment, get it out of their shack, it's inducing domestic tranquility at his house or her house, okay? Because somebody, the idea of, well, people, you know, spouses keep an eye on what's in your shack. Well, wait a minute, whatever, you know. So anyway, it's a help to the person who's loaning it to you. Let me put it that way. Tip number 3, start with something nice and simple. You don't need to get what you see in the pictures. You don't need to have the top of the line anything. Doesn't have to have all the bells and whistles. Get something simple. Put up a simple antenna. Get on the air, whatever band it is, if you're going to get on the air. And I saw, you don't need, there's a guy in India who posted this, somebody that I had worked, and I looked at his website and it said, the best and cheapest way of DXing on HF is to make a simple dipole and wait for good band conditions. Right? I mean, and we have them now, so. I also suggest keeping it simple by just maybe getting on one band at a time and getting to know that band, whatever it is, if it's 6 or 160 or whatever. That's assuming you're going to get on the air. If you're going to get into a contest, try single band categories. You get to spend less time. You don't have to feel like you're missing something if you don't stay up all night. I assumed that there were going to be some techs here. I don't know that there are, but if there are. I looked at this. I wasn't really familiar with all the privileges they have. 10 meters is hot. You could get on sideband or CW, 200 watts, probably a dipole. You can work the world. Get on, and coming up, our DX contest, sideband, and anyway, it helps somebody get a good taste of what's going on. Tip number 4, I think a bunch of radios are sold that are QRP radios, and they're good for these portable operations, but 100 watts, 200 watts is a good, you know, you don't want to struggle if you're learning. You don't want it to, especially on phone, if you're going to do phone. And then as you get more experience, you can turn it down to 5 watts. That's what you want to do. I've done plenty of QRP, and I enjoy it. It's a big challenge, but I'm not recommending it to the faint of heart. Domestic contests are or POTA activations are a little bit different, though, because this domestic, it's not that far, and it's amazing. Okay, tip number 5, set a goal, then gradually increase your capabilities, both antenna capabilities, equipment, and operating skills. And I want to recommend to you a great presentation I saw to the Front Range 6-meter group. Is that what it's called? I'm not a member of it, but I saw they had a presentation, and it was by N1 Alpha Victor. And this is a guy who wanted to get that, in the 6-meter world, people chase grid squares. And there are 400 and something of them in the US. And you get the Fred Fish Memorial Award if you make contact on 6 meters with all of these grid squares. And what this guy, and that's not the point about the presentation to me anyway, he was talking about his journey through that and how he upgraded both his skills and how he got information, how he changed his antennas, how he learned the propagation better. And he had a graph, and it went like, each time he made an improvement in something, he jumped up his numbers until he finally got to where he went. It was a great story of development. So again, increasing capabilities leads to lifelong learning. In my case, I've been chasing DX, trying to get to the top of the honor roll in the DXCC world. I was just happy I finally got there, but there was a guy that helped me on my rotator project, local guy, KT0DX, and he said that he got to the top of the honor roll in 9 years. And that's 340 countries, some of which don't always allow ham radio, like North Korea, for instance. I mean, how many hams are on from North Korea? Anyway, but in order to do that stepping up like N1AV did in this 6-meter journey, he learned things about receivers and transmitters and antennas and all that. While I was looking back, I went through the, I guess I'm wired. I went through the ARRL handbook, the new one. This is just another version of it, more portable. And I flipped through the table of contents to see which ones of those subjects I needed to go and learn about, because I didn't know. I wasn't technical. I didn't just know this stuff. I had to, there's 27 or 28 chapters. I had to go to 20 of the chapters. So that's how much learning goes into one of these goals, whatever your goal is. Okay, I think I already touched on this. Tip 6, resist rushing out to buy a big setup. Keep it simple. You got to make your own decisions. Don't do it based on what you see on somebody else's shack or picture or something. Tip number 7, never really thought about it as a, until recently, thought about it as something to do early on. Establish a workbench for yourself. Have a place where you can, let me back up. In my family, my father, he didn't know where a screwdriver was in the house, okay? Great guy, wonderful father, no complaints at all. I was blessed to have him as a father, but it wasn't what he did. He didn't use a screwdriver. My mother had one that she used to pry open paint cans, but that was it. And so anyway, I had to start up fresh, and I didn't just automatically have a set of tools I carried around with me. But it's great to have a dedicated space where you can start a project, leave it, come back to it later. Many things require fiddling over a period of time, and you have to sleep on it sometimes. Otherwise, you're out on a kitchen table, and family needing to share the space. It's tough. So a great source for getting inspired about putting together a workbench for what we do or need to do in ham radio is a podcast called Ham Radio Workbench. Now they're in the 200 or 300 episode range right now, but they began in July 2016, and this was the original concept. And they spent a couple of episodes. So you've really got 4 or 5, 6 hours of listening to them talk about what you really need for a good workbench, whether it's multimeters, comparing the different types and the different brands and stuff, having the right lighting, the right shelving. It's not one kind of, something that's really adequate, what you need, and you can make your own choice. And so for me, as soon as I listened to that, I got, oh, okay, now I got shelves, and I got a big long bench, and I got lighting, and a soldering iron. And, anyway, it's very inspirational. It was transformative for me. How to get exposed to new ideas. And I didn't finish this slide out because there's a lot more than just field day. But for me personally, I learned a lot at field day. You get to rub shoulders with more experienced hams oftentimes, problem solving, get to see stuff in action, whether it's operating. For me, that was a big deal, going to a field day and seeing that you can call CQ and have people call you, or that you can go and work one contact after another. That's, so besides field day attendance, you can go watch presentations. 2 days ago, I watched 4 presentations that were from the contesting university at Dayton Hamvention. And even though I've been in the game for the contesting game for more than 6 decades, I still came away with some kind of cool ideas and inspirations for stuff I'm going to do. And so you never know. I think ARRL publications, the QST, Current for the newer hams, and the National Contest Journal, they're all part of the subscription. You can get them. And QEX. And now that's illustrative because QEX is for experimenters and technical people. Whoa. But, you know, it's just, you get exposed to some things. I'll browse through that thing just to see what's going on. Not that I have to know or anything. I think it's great to subscribe to email reflectors. Groups.io has a lot of them on different subjects like towers, antennas. Clubs have them. What else do I see? SDRs I learn about. I lurk, though. I don't have stuff coming into my email box. Just, you check no email as your subscription type. And then you can go when you're in the mood or when you want to research something, because they have archives. They go back for all kinds of problems. I can't tell you how many times I've gone in and solved a problem that I had. You know, it's a great way to research. And another thing to do to get exposed to new ideas is to join a specialty club. For instance, CW Ops, the Grand Mesa Contesters of Colorado, this front range 6-meter group. If I make the turn and want to get deeper into 6 meters, then my occasional forays up there. That is a hell of an organization from what I understand. Their front range is where they started, but they have now, I think, over 400 members worldwide. That's how good it is. And you can lurk. You don't have to. And they have great presentations as well. Tip number 9, collaboration. It's an underappreciated, I think it's underappreciated. It's one of the things that gives satisfaction to a hobby or any endeavor. And how to be a good collaborator, I think, is how to share ideas and how to receive. It's not just giving and receiving, it's synergy. They come together. So how would you be a good collaborator? Well, first of all, it's not hard to find other hams who are willing to help. We sometimes think we have to do everything ourselves, and we can all do the research. Why not just do some research? I think a good collaborator, though, is somebody who think what you need help with, define the problem, not exactly, but generally, zero it in, do some general research on your own, get a basic understanding. Again, I propose the handbook. It's a great way to, you know, I want to learn about towers. Well, go in and just skim it. And then maybe keep notes about your thought process as you go along. That would be a good collaborator. And I'm collaborating with people quite a bit. And there's some really smart people, and you don't know how smart these people are until you ask them a question. And anyway, tip 10, I think I touched on this a little bit before. Be alert to what gives you satisfaction in the hobby. I used to like to chase some awards, worked all states, worked all zones, the XEC. But now I'm interested in searching out weak CW signals over difficult propagation paths. And I get satisfaction from pulling some 5-watt station through or being 5 watts and getting through. And again, this is another plug for the peak in the sunspot cycle, but one of the last times it was peaking like this, I entered a contest and with 5 watts from home, worked 112 countries on 15-meter CW. in the contest. I mean, the stuff was there. The band was so good. I don't know if it'll be that good again, but or working long path over one direction or the other, over South America or over Australia to Europe and on 40 meters. Did I just lose? No. What did I do? So anyway, I'm not bored yet with that, but if I do, I've got some backup. I think if you get bored with one mode or the other, you could try to, if you don't know CW, it's a great thing to do. It's easier to make contacts on HF. It's more relaxing than screaming and yelling on phone or listening to the, anyway, I don't know much about FT8, so I'm not going to say anything. I think it's pretty cool that you can't hear anybody, but they're there. I mean, but in CW, there's many subtle techniques. Bear in mind, if you haven't learned CW, remember that thousands and thousands and thousands of military people have learned the code, albeit at the point of a gun, but you know, they did. Boy Scouts did it. But there's progress right from the beginning. I'm trying to encourage anybody who's thinking about it. There's progress. You start to learn the letters. And when I was in the military, I wasn't in the code side of things. I was in communications. But anyway, I was in a boring mid-shift from midnight to 8. And there was a guy, we were sitting in an office, another military guy, and I taught him the code in one night, in 8 hours. He was really bored, so how much? I've got about 5 more minutes here. I'm watching the time. So, contesting and DXing, that was supposed to be my topic, so now I'm just starting my topic. Well, the basics of contests are contesting and DXing are both on-air activities. And I count POTA and SOTA kind of as contesting as well. Making contacts, various modes, sideband, teletype, FT8, CW, all the various bands in various formats. So a contest, if you're trying to work for an award, it's the best place to go find stations to work. They're all right there. They want to work you. If you want to test out antennas or hone your on-the-air skills, work towards, like I say, an award, worked all zones, worked all the DXCC or something, it's a great time to be on. Here is, and Rick, I'd be interested in hear if you know if you've seen this. Have you seen this? It just came out, I think. Yeah, it's a periodic table, but it shows the all the contests through the year. The months are across the top, and days come down. They're color coded for the modes. It's a great reference. You're thinking about getting on for some contest just to dabble or something like that. Next weekend is the WPX CW, right in here. End of next June is field day. Not next June, next month. Then for state QSO parties, if you're interested in counties, there's another periodic table. And here's some operating goals. I think I mentioned every one of those. 455 grid squares for the 6-meter Fred Fish Award. Now, when people are, there's another side. Just like in POTA, there's hunters and activators. Well, in DXCC, there is people who go out and they're the activators, and they make a trip to a country that's maybe not on very often. So I've been to a bunch of those. Not a bunch, but more than average. And this was a collaboration effort. I went to, where did I go? Okay. Here's, when I was in my 20s, I have a friend that, he's the guy that we didn't ride, we didn't have our driver's licenses yet when we met each other on 20 meters. And that we collaborated and we overcame the challenges to get to this place. This was with Andorra. We had to find out how to get an authorization to use our radios, transport the stuff into the country. Andorra is in between France and Spain in the Pyrenees Mountains, separate country. And it gave me an early taste of going someplace that's off the beaten path. No gift shops up there. Not at this place anyway. Not a destination resort, that's for sure. It has a sod roof. At the time, there were smugglers that were active out of that house. They were smuggling, not dope, but they were smuggling cigarettes for taxes back and forth between the two countries. So it was pretty cool, you know. And this is a way of saying that kind of drifting off into collaboration can lead to long-term friendships. And with ham radio, you can stay in touch with people all the time. He's traveled in his work. He's lived in a lot of countries, and he's traveled to a lot of the expeditions and so on. When I lived in Berlin in the military for 3 years, he and I talked via unauthorized channel. Statute of limitations is run. He was in Vietnam, and anyway. And when he lived in South Africa, I was living in Alaska, and not in the military, but I was up there for 6 years, and we would be in touch. And then when he was in Egypt, working for 3 years there, and I was in the U.S., we'd be able to be on the air and talk. And he's traveled and operated from a lot of interesting places, and occasionally we've collaborated and I've gotten to go with him. So to Ascension Island, the Azores, Mauritius a couple of times in the Indian Ocean. And he's inspired me to go and work DX contests 3 times from Costa Rica, Ecuador, Suriname. You know, again, sometimes not so destination resorty.
Excuse me, Alan, did you communicate with him by CW?
Usually. Well, the time when he was in Egypt, I called on phone. I'm just saying, okay? Sometimes it happens. And I called this guy, and it turned out to be his friend Mohammed, and Oliver, that's my friend. He was sitting right next to him, and he grabbed the mic and said, "Hey!" You know, so it was a surprise for both of us, I think. So, bottom line, for entry into the world of DX and contesting, if that's something that's of interest, simple scrounged equipment, simple antenna, especially with these great conditions we're having. Show up when a contest is going on if you want to put your toe in the water. You don't have to do anything. If you don't like it, you don't, but it's kind of fun to have worked somebody. Technicians can, it was there, you know, the band map, the band plan. Set yourself a simple goal. I'm going to make 10 contacts. I'm going to make 5 contacts. I think the guy that did the periodic table, he's a data analyst by profession and nerdiness. I've met him. I've talked to him. I know him. He's made a survey statistically of the entries into contests and how many people. He's figured out some way to say, okay, of all the people in the worldwide DX contest, the biggest one is like 10,000 entrants in the CW weekend and 10,000 entrants about in the sideband weekend. He said only about 10% of them are serious people. In other words, the other people are casual operators. at one level or another. So if you go in as a casual operator, you're in the majority, and the big competitive people, they really want you. So you're not an outsider, you're necessary. So, bottom line for finding a satisfying path in ham radio, allow yourself to draw on something that's exciting, magical to you, and start small, expand as you wish and in the direction you want to. Ask for help and be a good collaborator. Thank you.
That's great.
Thank
Anybody have any questions for Ellen?
Sometimes, when you have a contact and then you look up the other guy's call sign, there's something that says, for confirmation, you need to go to some other call sign. And it never says how to do that.
Well, the whole idea of confirmations, if you want a QSL card.
Not the card, but the QSS or LOTW.
Okay, LOTW. If he's going to upload to LOTW, the logbook of the world, that should just appear. But then there's another button sometimes, I don't know what it's called, but there's something that you can then PayPal some money for the postage and they'll send you a card.
Oh, you are,
Thank you. I had a hunch you'd know.
What do you use for logging software?
I use two different ones. And I'm not very disciplined. I mean, here's what I do. I use N1MM Plus. And then I have one, it's called DX Log. And it has some features that are built into it that I kind of like. But then when I'm done with the contest, every 6 months or so, I'll go through and download those logs and put them into Logger 32. Don't ask me why I do that. So that's what I do. Those are. Oh, and this guy that I was talking with, the periodic table, he's got a chart. Go to his website. I think his call is N3 Quebec Echo. His name is Tim, and I think he's got a link to. He has a chart showing over history how the different logging programs have been popular or not popular. If I'd known you were going to ask that, I would have made a slide.
Awesome. Any other questions?
So that was a long answer, I'm sorry. I've made it complicated. Thank you.
It's kind of what we do. We're professionals at making things complicated.